I would like to start by saying unequivocally, uncategorically, that I deny each and every single allegation against me today that suggested in any way that I had conversations of a sexual nature or about pornographic material with Anita Hill, that I ever attempted to date her, that I ever had any personal sexual interest in her, or that I in any way ever harassed her.
It was and still is considered by many to be one of the more political witch hunts in modern American history. Depends on which side of the aisle you were on at the time, how you feel about it. Clarence Thomas was being considered for the Supreme Court, and a lawyer who worked for him at the Equal Opportunity Commission accused him of sexual harassment. Thomas coined the phrase high-tech lynching to describe how we believed, and he believed, he was being treated over the accusations by Anita Hill. She stood her ground, and to this day it remains an open wound on Supreme Court proceedings. It is being revisited in a new cable film from home box office entitled Confirmation, debuting on the network April 16th. And our guest was assistant counsel to the president during the George H.W. Bush administration and played a key role in the confirmation efforts of Justice Thomas. Let's welcome Mark Paoletta to the Hard Line. Mark, I want to thank you so much for being here this evening. And the thing that strikes me about this right off the top is, and I guess this is even amazing to you and other people, we are still arguing to this day over who held the high ground in that case, who was right and who was wrong. It remains historic to this day.
Ed, thanks for having me on. You know, it's unfortunate we're still arguing because I think at the end of those hearings, when the American people got to watch them, they believed Clarence Thomas 2-1. And I think what's important is that when the curtain came down on those hearings, the left went about trying to rewrite history. And this is what this movie's about. It's the left's continuing efforts to rewrite history. When the American people, when those hearings happened, everyone was riveted to their TV sets and watched those hearings. And they watched Justice Thomas testify, they watched Anita Hill testify, they watched all those other witnesses over the weekend testify. And it was very clear that Anita Hill's story never added up. And that's why Thomas was confirmed. It was a Democratic-held Senate, and he was confirmed 52-48. But again, I think this movie is an effort to rewrite history.
Why is it so important then to certain people, in your opinion, to rewrite history all these years later?
Well, I think that Clarence Thomas has been a threat to the left since he's gotten on the court and before that. And I think you know, when you look back at her story, and the story never added up. As you know, she went from one agency to another. She claimed that Thomas harassed her at the Department of Education, and then she went over to the EEOC with him. That's unheard of. Who follows their sexual harasser to another job? When she was asked about that during the hearings, she lied about it. She said that she didn't know who Thomas's successor was. That's wrong. Harry Singleton was at the agency 6 weeks before Thomas left, sat right down the hall from Anita Hill, offered her a job, and yet she claimed she didn't know who Thomas's successor was under oath. She said that she didn't have job security, that she was essentially a political appointee. Senator Specter confronted her on that and said, you were a Schedule A career attorney. And she said, my understanding was that I wasn't protected in that job. That was wrong. That was contradicted by numerous officials at the Department of Education. And then she said this crazy reason that the Department of Education was scheduled to be abolished, and that's why she needed to leave the job. So again, all of her, as you listen to her story, there were so many inconsistencies that it just never added up.
What about the historic nature of what this said, this specific instance said about dirty tricks when it comes down to the Supreme Court? And I say that because right now when you have the big argument going about Judge Merrick Garland right now, people are worried about dirty tricks on the left, on the right, and all this.
Right.
What does it say that it still exists to this day, and there's nothing more important to some people than to making sure there's a subterfuge that goes on when it comes to Supreme Court appointments?
Well, you know, I think the Democrats started this, if you recall, back with Robert Bork in 1986 and 87, and tried to demonize him and really, in my view, set a new low that to this day. Now, the interesting thing is, you know, it then ended up with Thomas in 1991, which was as low as you can go, one of the greatest smear attacks, in my opinion, on an honorable man in American history. and the left is still fighting to destroy Thomas on the bench. When you look at the Republican nominees that have come after that, right, and even before with Souter, the left tried to demonize David Souter as some right-wing crazy person, and we all know that was completely wrong. When you look at the Democratic nominees, the Republicans have been pretty professional with Breyer, with Sotomayor, with Kagan, with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It's the left that plays politics with Supreme Court nominations, and now they want to sort of go back to an earlier time with Garland.
The movie, once again, is called Confirmation. It's on home box office, and it will reopen these wounds again, and it will allow the American people of today, who have no idea what happened back then, to make the judgment on their own, still remembering it's only just a movie, and it's not all fact. Mark Paoletta, thanks so much for joining us. We do appreciate your time. Snap to the political animal next. Statements by Bernie Sanders and a lot more when we continue.